Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Finding Freedom. Before we get started, caps off because we're not capping in this video, as the kids say these days, and they like to say on shows like Fresh and Fit and all those other popular shows that use slang or colloquialisms, as they put it, right? Let's talk about law enforcement for a second because we want to, wake some people up and have them say, I should probably think about this. See, when you're growing up in certain environments, you get to see certain things happen. Now, starting off in New York and then traveling to California, Texas, Virginia, and everywhere else, you notice that, law enforcement, even if they're in an undercover vehicle, normally drive American cars. Why is this? Well, that's because the big automobile dealerships, preferably American car dealerships, normally give discounts and cut deals with law enforcement for their vehicle training. And, during my time in the military, even BMW gets $5,000 off if you were to purchase a Beamer. But they have a magnesium engine, and if you ever carried a fire starter, which I just confirmed with Google, you could go check with yourself, you could take a couple shavings off of a magnesium block, and it's highly flammable. See, the problem with a magnesium engine is that once it's hot and water gets on it, it's sure to break because the foundation and the structure was not set appropriately. Now, if you're going undercover or you're doing certain things, so on and so forth, or you're trying to drive a unmarked car and you're in law enforcement, you probably shouldn't have an American vehicle. This is like Dodge, Chevys, so on and so forth. You can identify them by either their headlights, tail lights, or the logo. The Chevy has like a cross symbol, so on and so forth. Then you have, Dodge, etc. Then you have the Ram, not a lamb, so on and so forth, logo, etc. And it's just all these commonalities that you normally see. And then, of course, you have to check the license plates. And if you ever hung around criminals who get paid to make license plates, they also pick up on what's known as pattern recognition, which was brought to my attention when Gary Vaynerchuk said the same thing within the marketing space, because pattern recognition is so prevalent when it comes to things like marketing. See, if you're going to study human behavior, you have to make sure you first study humans and how they like to manipulate, deceive, and influence people. See, there is a movie that was called The Intimidation Game, and Benedict was in there, who also plays Sherlock in the TV show Sherlock Holmes for BBC. He was also Doctor Strange. Now, one of the things that I appreciate from this was that his keen observation on certain things. So you can tell what level of law enforcement is actually following you on your tail or listening to you based upon the tools and the devices that they have, i.e., local law enforcement normally drive American vehicles unless they get granted special permissions. Then they get to drive other vehicles, right? Why is this? Well, it comes down to branding. See, certain companies do not want to be branded by having their cars used by law enforcement, because then certain people won't purchase their vehicles, especially intelligent ones. So if you are able to pick up on these patterns and things like that, you either will get a American car, whether it's a deal or not. But if you're driving around in a Charger and, or you get it from an auction house and it's an old Charger or an old police vehicle, it'll sometimes have the light on the side. So therefore you think you can get by driving that vehicle because you don't know if there's other law enforcement on the road that might identify that vehicle and say, oh, he might be one of us. So let's keep going, right? The further you go up and the higher you go within law enforcement, so on and so forth, etc., the more complex it gets. And then, of course, you have the SUVs that are portrayed in TV shows when the FBI is around, or other law enforcement branches. Why is this? Well, because SUVs can handle high impact. They have decent horsepower, crappy gas mileage. However, they can be, a very structured environment, and that can take an impact, so on and so forth, and reinforced quite easily. Why? Because, they're under fire too, and they want to be protected, and they have to protect their agents. Now, if you're driving around in an Escalade, that's completely different because, well, certain individuals drive Escalades. And if you're trying to portray a role, you have to look the part, right? You remember, if I ever mentioned this in another marketing video, where I talked about social engineering and social proof. Well, movies and television shows will have you see and believe one thing, and then you have to see if it plays out in the real world. So sometimes, if they're really good, they'll use a standard vehicle or a vehicle that looks, well, normal, right? That the everyday person or consumer can have, because let's face it, between a world of have and have nots, those with money can drive the Bugattis, live in nice places in Miami like Brickell, or South Carolina, so on and so forth, or in Texas, in these nice, wealthy areas, so on and so forth, and they drive certain vehicles. See, there was a rapper by the name of DMX, and there's a line in there that says, if you're flashing it, you must not want it. Some people will flash things to, well, provide what's known as social proof. And you will understand this if you Google it or ChatGPT sociology, which is the psychological understanding of groups of individuals and cultures and how they function. Now, if you were to look at certain ways people reveal information when they try to showboat or try to show that they have prowess, well, then there's higher levels of influence or information that is being shared. For instance, if they have access to finances, if they're able to prevent you from getting a job, if they're able to do certain things, then you could tell that they're associated to certain organizations, whether it's a three-letter agency or local law enforcement. Now, when it comes to the military, we do things a hell of a lot different. Even though we share some of our tactics, we leave some things out because, well, there's crosses everywhere. And if you remember another video that I mentioned, a cross is a BBC term or a UK term or a United Kingdom term for somebody who is a traitor, so on and so forth, etc. So if somebody is trying to showboat, or what's now known in the street as flexing, right? And then they call you out on it, etc. They might say things like, oh, you're capping, or you're living in the matrix, or get your head out of the clouds, etc. Where do those terms and phrases come from? See, people want to say the truth. People want to tell you the truth. However, when they tell you certain things because they got sworn to secrecy or whatever the case may be, some people sign contracts, NDAs, or whatever, they inherently will use different terminology, phrases, analogies, and metaphors to get the point across, right? Because people want to, well, not hold certain things in. Now, I remember I told a friend of mine, and this was around the time of the movie Now You See Me came out, and there was a hurricane in North Carolina. And I was like, magicians were told to keep certain secrets away from certain individuals for a particular good reason. They were the first line of defense. And she looked at me and goes, no, they weren't, so on and so forth. And she got very upset. And I don't think she understood why I said it, but I was just trying to help a sister out, being that we were both in the military. Long story short, she eventually got it. She eventually understood. But there's certain individuals that are just a little bit too hard-headed and don't understand that, well, I keep pushing this person and they're not doing anything. One of the tactics that people will use is, well, there's a carrot and a stick, right? Well, the carrot is kind of like bait on a hook that's on a line attached to a sinker, right? And what is a hook, line, and sinker but a phrase when you caught somebody in the act time and time again, utilizing certain privileges, flexing certain things, manipulating for God knows what reason, and then leveraging that so that they could, benefit from the populace or put more money in their pocket because they're deceptive or because they're trying to manipulate and show that they're powerful? See, here's the thing. If you have a bait on a hook, line, and sinker, you just have to wait, because fishing, whether that's fishing with a PH, as they say, fat with a PH, right? If they're fishing, this will be either a technical term that's used while you're actually fishing, or fishing when you're a hacker, so on and so forth, and you're looking for information. You just have to wait, right? But what do you wait for? Well, you have to dangle bait out there, and that's the carrot. The stick is the flex. The carrot is the bait. Now, if the carrot can withstand the stick because it's been beaten on over and over and over again, well, then you just have to wait for everybody else to observe the actions of the other individuals that partook and partake in their, well, own personal sadistic behavior. Now, if they're trying to teach someone a lesson or catch somebody, that's one thing, but they would have to prove that they're actually doing something wrong. And then on the other hand, well, there's just a misuse of what I would like to call magic at play. And when you misuse magic, right, the tactics that they teach, so on and so forth, well, then other people start coming out of the woodworks, and, there's going to be issues. The person you're attacking may do nothing. And why is that? Well, because they're probably there to let everyone else see what it is, not only that you're capable of, what you're doing, who you're communicating with, whom you're paying off, how money is being moved, and, well, who you give a break to every once in a while, because you might learn something. So if this made you think or go, remember, as the song goes, make them say, nah, 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 nah. See, a nosy Nancy is a no-no. Why shouldn't you be a nosy Nancy? Well, in certain environments, when people try to pretend, let's say they're listening to headphones and they're just trying to chill out, so on and so forth, because they need a better reception, so on and so forth, while they're overhearing conversations, right? Or when you're in the matrix, as I mentioned before, see, psychological and sociological understanding would dictate that survival works best when you work in numbers or groups. This is why wolf packs actually work better together instead of having just the sigma. The sigma and the alpha also work together, so on and so forth at times. Not to mean that there's not just two sigmas or whatever. That would spell ass, and I don't want to hear that one, right? Because somebody actually rode in on a donkey, and Lord knows if you misuse that interpretation of things, well, then you're going to get confused about everything else. See, I'm former military. I'm also a Marine. And one of the ways they teach us to cross the street is to look up, down, left, and right. Now I'll leave that up to you. But Kendrick Lamar at the Super Bowl said game over. And if you think we're playing a game and you think that up, down, left, right is a starting point of a cheat code that you used to put into PlayStation, whether you were playing Twisted Metal or whatever, or circle, circle, dot, dot, so on and so forth, etc., well, then you're sadly misconstrued, because there's always somebody watching and there's always somebody else that's listening. Not only is that happening, but it happens at a group level. So if you're not smart enough to understand that, then you're smart enough to get caught doing the infallacy and dealing with the repercussions that occur not only in the area, but when you become a hypocrite, disobeying the Hippocratic oath because you think you know something, when in actuality, you don't know shit. Now you're in trouble. So, for all of you out there, if this video opened up your eyes, if you think I'm capping, as they say, and if you don't know that word, go to the Urban Dictionary, go ask Fresh, especially, so on and so forth, or his twin brother, or whatever the case may be, etc., and let's talk about it, shall we? Because now that things are coming out, I'm going to be doing law enforcement training in the North Carolina area. So if you are in law enforcement, I will be coming to your local stations, so on and so forth, and offering my services to help educate you. And as the medical community has continuing education, otherwise known as CE, now continuing education is CE, but in the timeline, you can also look at CE or BC or AD, so on and so forth. And I'll let you figure out those acronyms for yourself. But there's a reason why people don't mess with the USMC, and that's for a reason. Anyways, till next time, my friends, take care. God bless. Mwah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.